That's all they mean. And their contention here is that where you have closely spaced wells, those cones begin to overlap and people's wells go dry. So these papers are both from the Piedmont. They're not intended for conclusions to be drawn in the mountains. But I think that it's quite reasonable to view that as, I said, a more forgiving environment than the one we live in. So that similar studies here, I believe, would show similar or even more conservative conclusions regarding lot size for houses. So my purpose or desire in being here and being able to talk to you is that the county begin some sort of planning process to make sure that we don't develop liabilities for ourselves that would be related to providing water in every valley and every hollow where there's a set of homes that with wells that have gone dry. I think there are definable ways in which the county, working proactively with various state agencies, could determine where these areas are likely to be and thus head off a knee-jerk reaction, which would be likely very expensive if you had to respond to subdivisions that are beginning to call in to the planning department or to your offices saying, our wells are gone dry, we need help. So that's the content of my slides, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Jim, is there any study anywhere that has identified the maps where the water is, where the water is not? And have any counties, to your knowledge, kind of gotten on this and said, okay, we're going to put you on notice, this is a area that's likely to go dry?
I'm not aware of any in the mountains. In fact, I believe there are not any in the mountains. Orange County, down in the Piedmont, I think has made some headway in that. Again, their situation will be quite different, but I believe they've made some headway at that in doing some of these kinds of studies. The state, through a couple of divisions of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, are interested in looking at this topic, whether it's the Division of Water Quality or the Division of Water Resources. I think there are resources for counties to work with in answering these questions. It's a complicated question to answer, and I think that unless a county was forced to, that they would be have a leg up if they got an early start in working with these various state and federal agencies.
Isn't there a part of Weaverville that's the driest place in the state, or gets the least amount of rain in the state?
Well, I don't know that for a fact. I do know that, as most people do, that Weaverville used to be called Dry Ridge, so you have to assume there's some connection there. If you begin to look at this anecdotally, you can dredge up all sorts of examples of dry wells and areas where the fire departments are hauling water to residents. I know that's the case in Reems Creek and out towards Fairview. You can come across all sorts of anecdotes. They seem to find me increasingly. And that's interesting information, but I think for governing, something a little more systematic would provide a better basis for planning, for figuring out what to do.
Chip, can you be a little bit more specific about what you're talking about? I mean, what you would suggest that we do?
Sure. I guess I
looked. I mean, I see the slide.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm concerned. I'm curious. You know, you as an engineer, what you would propose, how we would go about finding out this information.
Well, the first thing I would do is try to work with the state, and so I would send the appropriate people out to meet with them, and identify what information already exists. I know, for example, that Jim Coleman in the planning department has an old map showing areas where groundwater supplies are likely to be limited. We were talking before this meeting, and he reminded me of an earlier conversation we had years ago on that map. So the county may have resources that have simply been tucked away for a really long time. It's almost a certainty that the state has good resources. I would start by by exhuming those resources, putting them together to see what that tells us. It may provide enough information for the planning department to make suggestions to you all. However, it may show that some site-specific, county-specific testing needs to be done. But those are the first two steps, I think.
Jim, I was part of a meeting where you made this same presentation at the Land of the Sky Regional Council. Have you gotten information? Is anything happening in counties adjacent to us? Is this a district-wide or a statewide effort in any way?
Well, again, I don't think there's any systematic approach in any of the other counties. But anecdotally, I hear that there are areas. But again, I don't put a lot of stock in that alone. But there's certainly not a systematic approach yet. And frankly, the nature of the problem, or the potential problem, is such that it will occur in the areas with the greatest development first.
Sure.
So it's likely to occur here and in Henderson before more the outlying counties.
One of the, I think you've talked about on the steeper slopes, and the steep slope ordinance, many cases requires 5 10-acre lot sizes, so it pretty much does what you've suggested as far as on the steeper slopes. So if you go the areas below 25%, which that's the flatter areas in the county, in the past the minimum lot size has been